Okay, Sabah, you wanted to make some statement, yes, please.
I think probably it was not fair for Michaela to ask her about Iran. She did her study on the crude oil and the market and the international scene. I think on the Iraqi scene, perhaps I could add something on that one. Iraq is an oil-dependent country throughout its recent history over the last 50, 60 years. During the monarchy time, the First Republic, Second Republic, etc. So one can look at the Iraqi oil revenue over probably periods, like if one looks at the Iraqi oil revenues pre-1991, one can look at it between 91 and 2003, and the third period is post-2003. In the pre-91, there was a central government, which was a dictatorship and abuses of human rights, etc., but there was a central government. There was a government which was functioning. There were corruption, but to a smaller limit. There was pilferage, but it was confined to certain people. Between 91 and 2003, Iraq was under a siege. It was a Middle Ages siege. Nothing went in and nothing went out. Even the food was under what's called the Oil for Food program. And we all remember the issues of the oil coupones. And we had everybody accused, from the son of Kofi Annan to the French politicians, to the Russians, to the Americans, to the various Western powers, plus people. Post-2003, we have a different situation. There is a hell of a lot of money, both liquid, because the state disappeared, and there was the money which came from the American taxpayer through the Americans, and there was also the oil revenues. And obviously, when you don't have a central government or a government in control, and this applies even to the period where Ambassador Bremer was running Iraq. When one looks at the report of the Federal Audit Office about that period and how the money was spent and how it disappeared, it doesn't make very nice reading. If one looks at how the UN was dealing with the issue of the oil for food, it doesn't make very good reading either. And if one looks at the governments, it's really very, very disturbing. But one can look at the, I'm thankful to my friend, I think Mr. Haki gave some figures about the salaries of parliamentarians. A member of Iraqi parliament gets paid or costs the revenue more than the Speaker of the British Parliament. But we in Britain, we are proud because the Iraqi government is a British government. The President of the Republic is a British citizen. The Prime Minister is a British citizen. The Deputy Prime Minister is a British citizen. The Vice President is a British citizen. We've got 6 ministers who are British citizens. So Her Majesty actually has a better control of the government in Iraq than it has in the government in the UK. The Queen, right. The problem in Iraq, I think, I've made some comparison about the various governments from the time Iraq became independent in the 20s and 30s of the last century and to the current time. And when I looked at the period when Iraq was part of the British Mandate, at the monarchy time and the periods thereafter, Britain tried to set up a country in Iraq that is a survivable state, but belongs to us. The 2003 recreation of Iraq, occupation of Iraq, also tried to create a state, but it's a not survivable state. They signed, both the British and the Americans signed, make the Iraqis sign exactly the same treaties. King George VI and King Faisal I signed the Defense Treaty. The government in Iraq signed the SOFA agreement with the US. The British made the Iraqis sign the oil concessions, IPC, MPC, BPC, the oil scene we can see in Iraq now. But the government which came to Iraq in 2003, and I know a lot of the individuals, they were refugees in Britain, they were opposition leaders, etc., etc. Those people still do not believe in Iraq. Their families are living in Jordan and England and Dubai and everywhere. The people themselves, their families is living outside. The interest of the politicians in Iraq, all the politicians, no, there are too many politicians here, I better be careful. There is corruption among politicians everywhere in the world, from Japan to Europe. But there is a degree of corruption. The situation in Iraq, it is the most failed state. It is number 4 on the bottom of the list of Transparency International. It is a country where its assets, whether it's the cranes or the buildings or the army or the airplanes or the tanks, all the things that that country has spent money to buy it from 1920 and 30 until 2003 were sold or exported or given within 2 years. There's nothing. That country has collected hardware. We have one of the ministers who was a minister of defense in Iraq. He's a British citizen. He lives in London. In the Sunday Times, they said this guy has stolen $1 billion. And he did not sue anybody. He did not take any action against anybody. We have the Minister of Trade. He's in Britain. He is accused of all sorts of other things. So the corruption is to such an extent. In my young days, I served in Nigeria, and I thought it was hell on earth. But now I think it's heaven compared to what Iraq is. I'm not going to go into how they are spending the money, but whatever the figures, we're talking about the revenues in Iraq from 2003 until now. There is nothing to show for it. There are no roads, no bridges, no hospitals, no schools, no universities, nothing. The buildings which were destroyed or damaged in 2003 are still standing there. The Kurdish area, which is a semi-independent area, is flourishing with cranes and buildings and hotels and everything else. But the rest of Iraq, and this is not a sectarian thing. It's not a Shia or a Sunni or anything. This is people who just either don't know or don't care, or actually intentionally are just not spending the money on anything. Yet they are relying on the idea that they are recognized because there is a democracy, they came after election, and somehow the world seems to talk to the Iraqis as if election equals democracy. All the dictatorships in the Arab world, from Morocco all the way to Saudi Arabia, including Iraq and Egypt and Syria and the whole, they had elections every 4 years. And every 4 years, the result was 99%, 98%. So the election is not democracy. The prime minister in Iraq, under the constitution, and his ministers, under the constitution, have to answer questions to the parliament. They refuse. And within the parliament itself, it's not a parliament that represents Iraq or its people. Every member of parliament represents his tribe, his sect, his master, whoever, nobody looks at the interest of Iraq. Now, there was this issue of ISIS taking oil, and the problem was ISIS was going to go to Erbil. At the time, ISIS, when they took the oil fields, they began to extract oil and sell it to the following. They were selling it to the Syrian government. They were selling it to the Syrian opposition. They were selling it to the Turkish government. They were selling it to the KRG. They were selling it to Iran, and they were selling it to Maliki when he was there. All these deals, for them to go through, they were at the time going through the Kurdish leadership. I'm not going to mention names. It was going through the Kurdish leadership because they were the people who could arrange or could allow it. Then there was a decision, for whatever reason, that we are not going to allow ISIS to do that. And that is, so effectively, according to ISIS, the Kurdish region reneged on the agreement. That's when they decided to move toward Erbil. They are not interested in Erbil. This is a thuggery. This is an organization which is the worst in the last century. We've seen a lot of terrorist organizations. In my young days, there were the Red Brigade, Bader Meinhof, and all the rest of the... They didn't chop heads. They didn't burn people alive. Those people are taking the Iraqis as hostages, and the Iraqis are the victims of ISIS, those who are under the control of ISIS. Yet, we are treating them as if they are ISIS. So we want to liberate Mosul from ISIS. Mosul is a city with 2 million people. Probably they have some 5,000, 10,000 ISIS guys. How do you liberate that? How many people are you going to kill to try and liberate it? I think the present situation, there is the army collapsed in Iraq. The Hashd al-Sha'bi, or it's effectively the popular army, under an edict from Sistani that they should rise up to fight ISIS. This one is almost numbering 150, 130,000 people. The Iraqi army, which was 150, became 50,000. The Hashd al-Sha'bi are getting the money from the government. Mr. Muqtada al-Sadr, who is the leader of one of the militias, actually formally announced that because the government is not giving them salaries, those fighters, because they are fighting terrorists and ISIS, they are entitled to take money from them as booties. This is the scene of the economy in Iraq. There is no, when one wants to talk about economy, you can talk about anybody. It's just like trying to talk about the economy of Somalia. Even in Afghanistan, you actually have some sort of an economy, whether it's tribal or whether it's local or whether it's government one. In Iraq, there's nothing. A friend of mine who lives in Mosul, he said, you think that now ISIS has taken over. He said, from 2003 until now, until ISIS came, he said, I was paying $100 a month to Al-Qaeda as protection money, and I was paying another $100 to the Maliki army and police for protection money. He said, when ISIS came, I'm $100 better off. He said, but I have a problem, because ISIS is now putting more restrictions on education, on children, on house, how you go. And not only that, they are not even providing the services they used to. When they first came, they restored electricity and water and some of the functional things. Now it's all stopped. So now the people in Mosul want to leave, but they're not allowed to leave. So you are a hostage of ISIS, living in Mosul, and you have some intelligent people sitting somewhere in the world say, we want actually to liberate them. So what do? We get the Canadians and the Australians and everybody else and the UAE to bomb them because we are bombing ISIS. And we want to liberate them. And yesterday, I think one of my friends was talking about they must be eradicated and removed. And I agree, fully agree with that. But there is a slight problem with that is how? What do? You know, this idea that you bomb them from the air. Ideology can never be bombed from the air. Ideology cannot even bombed from the ground, even if you put boots on the ground. Ideology is a different thing. You fight it a different way. Ideology is a symptom of something. You treat the cause, you get rid of the symptom. You treat the symptom, you don't get rid of the cause. And if you do it in Mosul, you get Fallujah, and you get Raqqa, and you get Syria, and you get North Africa, and you get Boko Haram, and you get, eventually it'll go somewhere else. And in Yemen, and probably one of these days it'll get down to Saudi Arabia, and then we'll have a completely different issue. It is these things which I hope that we can think about it a little more realistically and a little more sensibly. The government in Iraq from 2003 until now, they got more funds than the previous governments over a period of probably 20 years. And they have nothing to show for it. And this is not politics. I'm talking about facts. It's very simple. One can have a look at how many buildings were there, how many ministries, how many schools, how many hospitals. What is the health service there? What's the education system? Forgetting about the security aspect. That is when you make people, when you do things so badly, you make people choose between two evils. And they make a comparison between this evil and the previous one. So you end up with the people under ISIS saying, we want to get rid of ISIS, but please, you're not going to bomb us, nor are you going to bring us the people who are going to take the money from our houses and kill us. That is the government. And certainly they don't own foreign troops. It doesn't matter. I think my friend yesterday said that he could send Egyptian army. You know, this is a load of hot air. Britain talked about taking part in it. We debated a whole day in Parliament, and we had a vote, and we agreed that we're going to go with the coalition. You know what we're talking about? In Britain, we have 6 tornadoes that are stationed in Cyprus. These 6 tornadoes, every day, every other day, I don't know, they fly over, they go to Turkey, they go over Iraq, and if they find a truck to bomb, they will bomb it. If they don't, they'll come back. That is our contribution. There is a coalition of 60 countries. I don't know, you know, I can find out who they are. But certainly the European countries, the US, and Canada, right, and the Arab countries. I don't know whether those people are really serious about it, or is it just like the coalition of the willing in 2003 when Senegal was brought in to help with the liberation of Iraq. And I'm sure the USA Army did not really need Senegal. But they sent Senegal, they asked Senegal, so that we can say it was the coalition of the willing 32 countries. Thank you very much.